Silicon comes in many fragments.
All right, welcome to another installment of Fragments of Silicon, the Daylight Interviews. Joining us this week is Unepic Fran of Fran Games.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, how are you doing today?
Well, today it's quite a hot day. It's been raining all the time, and here in Barcelona, Spain, that's not useful. That's not usual. So everything is a mess. But I'm here to be with you.
I'm like duly noted. I'm like I can imagine what that weather's like because I experience it quite a lot. Hot and rainy. Oof. Not high humidity, not fun.
Mhm.
Anyway, right. So how we like to get started is we like to get to know the people behind the games and the studio and all that business. And we start by asking this particular question: what got you interested in video games, both on a personal and a professional level?
So why I am interested in video games?
Yes.
Well, I've been interested since I was 12 years old, since I got my first computer. The reason, it looked like magic, so I loved it, and I loved the first video games, and they were very expensive, so I started to do them by learning from some books I had with MSX computers in the 80s. So it became my hobby, and I loved making video games. So eventually it became my job, and now I'm an independent developer.
Indeed. So what did you use to make video games at first?
The first thing I used was BASIC. It's a language. It's a very slow language. And then I leapt to Pascal, a language called Pascal, and eventually I ended up with programming in C++, which is like the basic language for all platforms. And nowadays I'm still coding in C++,
Mm.
which is
C++,
fascinating. I love it.
right. C++ is still fairly viable in terms of programming. I'm not sure how it compares to C sharp, but you know, like I know it's used more than BASIC. Anyway, so where did the jump from hobbyist to professional?
I think Twitch just broke.
And it's back.
Yeah. Did you record locally?
I did not, but we can start at the top, and I can just hit local record. Since we
All
didn't
right,
miss a whole lot.
let's start from the top. Like, all right. Sorry, sometimes
Just checking if that was a Petty Fan thing or a Twitch thing.
No, that was
Twitch thing is definitely plausible.
Yeah, Twitch does not like getting up this early.
Nor do you. But all right, apologies, but sometimes the technical equipment, has its conniptions.
All right.
All right.
Gullix, are you ready?
So,
All right, countdown when ready.
Do you have the songs in the right order?
Yeah.
Okay. We can begin again in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Silicon comes in many fragments.
All right, welcome to another installment of the Fragments of Silicon Daytime Interviews. We are recording this locally, yes? Betty?
Yes.
Okay. Technology, isn't it wonderful? Anyway, joining us this week is our guest, Unepic Fran of Fran Games. How are you doing today?
I'm fine. I'm happy to be here with you.
Yes. Right. So we'd like to get started. We'd like to get to know the person behind the games, behind the studio, and we start by getting to know your background, and thus how did you get interested in video games?
Well, I started when I was 12 or 13 or 14. I can't remember exactly. It was when I had my first computer. It was an MSX computer. And when I saw a video game on it, I said, oh my God, that's great. I really have to do it. So I grabbed a book and started to study it by myself. And I started to program to create some small video games. And they became more and more complicated. And eventually, it became my job.
Okay. An MSX, like that is, I'd say a deep cut, but I don't know how popular that computer was across continental Europe. Like
MSX was very popular in Japan, in Spain,
Yes.
Holland, in
I know that,
Italy as well, and France.
like, yeah. I know it was Europe and Japan. Just in certain parts of Europe, it was more popular than others. Yeah. Anyway, so how did you make the transition from amateur to professional?
It was in 1998 when I finished the college. So making video games was still a hobby, and I really enjoyed it. And a friend of mine told me that Ubisoft was looking for people to create a studio in Barcelona, Spain. So I went to the interviews, and they got me. So it looks like I started to work for Ubisoft, and that was the very beginning of my career as a video game programmer. And I've been programming video games since then. That was so we can say I've been working 25 years doing video games.
That is an impressively long career. Like,
It is.
and I suppose it's worth asking, what did you work on at Ubisoft?
I worked on racing games. So and I hate racing games, so I had to do them, and I didn't like them, so it was. But we started with rally games, and then we jumped to Monster Jam games, and then I quit. I said I prefer to do my own ideas.
And how long was your tenure at Ubisoft?
I worked for Ubisoft. I think it was 3 or 4 years. I can't remember exactly, but it was very nice. People was very nice people, a good boss. But we had to do what Paris told us to do, so we had no choice. And that was the reason I quit, just to create my own ideas with Java phones.
Fair enough. And did you enter the indie scene there, or did you work somewhere else before, founding Fran Games?
Before founding before being an independent developer, I had a company. I created a company with someone else to do mobile phones, cell phones and mobile phones. And that
Right.
was crazy, very hard. And I finally quit it because I didn't like it. We ended up just making video games for other people. And
Yeah.
so I started to create an epic by my own on my free time. And once I published an epic and I started to earn money, I made the leap. I jumped from company rubbish to be a true independent developer.
Okay. And when did you start development on Epic?
It was it was 2009. I think it was 2007 or 9. I can't remember clearly, but I stayed for 2 years and a half working on my free time, making the video game just for fun. But later I found out it could be sold, so it could be commercial, and it was very successful, and I was very impressed by it. I didn't expect it, so that changed my life.
Like, oh, it's good that it worked out for you. Especially, given uncertain markets and all that nomenclature. But anyway, so for those who might not know, what is Unepic?
Epic is my first video game as an independent developer. The game that changed my life and launched my career as a solo dev, we can say. So it's a video game. It's a Metroidvania with a lot of RPG. You can level up a lot of items and weapons. A big castle, bosses. So that was my first project. That's an epic, and a lot of humor, of course.
Mm-hmm. And where did the inspiration for all that come from?
Inspiration came from a video game called The Maze of Gallius from MSX. It was an MSX game I used to play when I was a child. And, the idea of getting lost in a big castle and find stuff and fight monsters and find items, and it was very appealing. And I really wanted to do a video game like that. So in the end, I ended up doing an epic, which is very inspired of The Maze of Gallius.
Right. Not the only video game that took inspiration, but doesn't come up often. And I suppose I should ask what the Maze Gallius is, since I'm pretty sure our listener base isn't all that familiar with an MSX title.
Mm-hmm. Well, in fact, besides Maze of Gallius, another game I was inspired was Diablo from Blizzard, especially for the inventory system, just and everything. That's another game I was inspired by. Which Diablo itself was inspired by Moria, a video game in text mode.
Did not know that.
Yeah, Moria or Angband. Yeah. It's so Diablo itself is it's a graphic game of that type. So I played it much before, and I said, oh my god, it's the same, but with graphics and cool movements and animations and everything. So it's great, yeah.
Right. With that in mind, you've called this game Unepic.
Mm-hmm.
What does that mean exactly? Like, what's so unepic about this quest?
Yeah, good question. And I called Unepic. I think just trying to find a good name, and it was hard to find one. So I said, okay, the game is supposed to be epic from this, but because of the humor, because of the character, the main character is not a hero, but someone from the current times, from nowadays, that is somehow teleported to these dark ages. And his way of seeing life as a gamer and as an RPG player just is faces, the way of thinking of the characters and everything there. So it creates very funny moments. And that's why it's called an epic, because it's an epic game, but because of the main character, it makes it an epic in a certain way because of the comic situations.
Now, I get what you're saying. It's that is very what we call postmodern. You know, it's ironic and
ironic. That's the word. It's ironic.
Yeah. Because the quest is actually epic, but he's not treating it as such. Was it hard to make a comedy game?
Not at all. In fact, the first version of an epic was not comical. Comical at all. It was a serious story, and I was very proud of it because I spent 3 months thinking a cool story. But the thing is, when I sent the game to my friend and he tried it and he played it, he told me that the story was from Zelda. And I said, "What do you mean? I never played Zelda." So he told me, "Yes, it's a story of Zelda." So it turns out that by accident, I created a story very similar to one of the Zeldas. So I said, I cannot leave this story. I have to change it. And my wife suggested to use a character from today, a guy like you or me, but teleported to this sort of castle. And I say, oh yeah, that's a good idea. And I really like to make jokes and I really like humor. So thinking when I was younger and the stupid things I used to say with my friends when we played RPG, top table RPG. So I just had to to bring that memories and put it in the game. So it was quite easy to do it from my side.
Well, I mean, that is handy because I know comedy games, they're not all that common. And heard from others that, coming up with comedy isn't necessarily the easiest thing in the world. But, it's...
The tricky thing about making a comedy thing is that you have to actually make it funny.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And with Unmetal, I had this problem, but for me, it was not a problem. It was organic. So everything I thought, it came like funny things to my mind, and I had to just write it in the game. And for me, I don't know, because it's the way I am, because the way I think. But for me, it's quite easy to find funny things.
Right. Well, once again, it's good that you had a very rich pool to draw from, like as someone who's engaged in campaigning more than once. I know how comedy can arise from such things, as I'm sure my colleagues here can as well. Like, at any rate, I suppose we do have to delve into this topic, given how scorching hot it's become in the last couple of days. But what sort of engine do you use in the creation of your game?
I'm using my own engine. I created one 25 years ago.
Ooh.
And I've been using it since then. Of course, I've been improving it with more things, using C++ and OpenGL for graphic and direct sound for sound, and SDL for controllers. But yeah, my own engine. So all these Unity thing that is happening right now, it doesn't affect me any.
Okay.
I'm lucky. I'm lucky because. Yeah, but using your own engine is a nightmare when you have to port the game to other platforms like PlayStation or especially PlayStation and Xbox. They are big stone. They're really hard to do.
Well, I mean, I suppose that begs the question: do you port your games yourself, or do you rely on a outside entity to do that?
No, I port them myself. So basically, as each platform supports C++, the game is the same, exactly the same code. So I don't have to change anything. Maybe adapt somehow, but not reprogram anything. The only thing that changed is the engine itself. A few files that goes straight to the hardware. The problem is that once everything is working, after a year and a half, 2 years, when you have a new game, they change everything. Some functions that don't work, and you have to reprogram everything with examples that don't work, with documentation that is dated because it comes from all the versions. So it's a big mess. It's a big nightmare doing
As
it.
somebody who
But
does
once
stuff with
it works,
IT, yeah, I know that hell.
yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, yeah. And then you can ask to the
Windows, why?
technical service, yeah, and wait for days and more days or a week to be reply dates. For me, it's the worst. The worst part of making a video game is doing the portings and finding a title as well. This is horrible, very hard to do. Finding a title for the game. For me, one of the hardest things ever. Finding a title.
Like, game development is an interesting river. Nothing else.
It is.
Because different devs have different problems. Let's say. But with that in mind, so Unepic got released and became a notable success. And then your next game, or I suppose era of games, are Ghost 1.0 and Mini Ghost.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, which I think are your more, at least from what I played, a more serious affair than either Unepic or Unmetal.
Yeah, yes, that's correct. So my second game was Ghost 1.0, and I wanted to do it more serious, more focused to a commercial product. But the thing is, the pressure of people after playing an Epic, they wanted more fun, they wanted more humor. So it forced me to introduce some humor in the game, and I had to do it. But I felt the pressure of having a product before, but of having an Epic and being a success. It was a pressure on me. And in the end, Ghost 1.0 was not that successful, of course, because when I launched an Epic, you could find 4, 5, 6 games a week on Steam. So 2 or 3 on Tuesday, 2 or 3 on Thursday or Friday. I can't remember. So you had a lot of visibility. So you created a game and everyone saw the game. Everyone could download it. However, when Ghost 1.0, it was 2016, when it was released, there was already a big amount of video games coming out every single day. So just by publishing it, you didn't have visibility granted. You have to do it by your own. And I didn't. So it was much, much less successful. That's also the fact that the RPG games and Lord of the Ring type games are more appealing than futuristic games like or cyberpunk games. People love more killing orcs than killing robots. So yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I can see how that arises because Ghost 1.0 is very different than Unepic. Fantasy versus sci-fi.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, in terms of like being a Metroidvania, does this game differ all that much from your Unepic game?
No, not that much. It's just a Metroidvania. So
okay,
you have a map with the different parts you have to unlock, and it's typical Metroidvania. The difference was the gameplay itself. While an Epic is more RPG, more slow, more get your weapon, and Ghost 1.0 is more action. You have more action, more bullets here and there, and shooting all the time. It's different. It's more stressing, more action against more against exploration and going slowly. The pace is completely different. That's the big difference between the two games.
Yeah, that's another thing that will create conflict, I'd imagine. If someone was, more used to the pace of Unepic versus Ghost 1.0, like, but would you say that Ghost 1.0 was a commercial success?
No, I don't think so. I mean, Ghost 1.0 has been. I've recovered all the all the money I put on it. So everything was recovered in a year. So since then, everything has been profit and profit and profit. So it's okay, but it's not being a big success like for me like an Epic.
Fair enough. But still, breaking even is better than losing money, especially on the indie scene. Like,
Yeah, fortunately, I didn't lose any money with any game. Only with a Kickstarter that didn't work. So, of course, everything I invested on that Kickstarter just vanished. But for video games, I can say that all the video games I released have been profitable, and I've recovered everything quite soon. So I'm happy for it. And I cross my fingers. I cross my fingers that still is going to be the same in future projects.
no doubt. Was that Kickstarter the Alive project?
The Kickstarter was a freight project. It was I never did the Kickstarter project. I didn't know how it worked. I thought I had visibility on the page, but it was not. And I was not prepared. So I did a bad campaign, and that here in Spain, everyone just put money, and everything I raised was from Spain. But Spain is 5% of the global public. So out of here, so nobody found out about the project. But that's it. No problem. It was just that's why I made a Kickstarter, because it was like an experiment. Let's see if it works. If it works, okay. If it doesn't work, okay, we go to something else.
Right. And on that notion, Mini Ghost. This seems to be a bit of an experiment of some sort.
Mini Ghost has a story behind. Mini Ghost was the first game I developed for an MSX computer recently using assembler. So I'm calling it assembler. I always wanted to do one, and I had a free month, and I did the game for MSX. But the thing is, here in Spain, there's a very famous painter who used to create the covers of video games 30 years ago. He's very popular here. And I said, I want the cover from this guy. He's called Aspiri. The thing is, he charged me a lot of money because he's well known, and he charged me $1,000 for a cover. And I said, "Oh my God, that's a lot of money. I have an idea. I'll do a porting of the game, and I'll publish on Steam. And with the money raised from Steam, I'm going to be able to pay the cover, and also to pay for the few months I've been working on it." And it worked. I just published it to $2, something very, very, very cheap. And well, people loved it because they could create their own characters and create their own maps, and so this small game worked.
Well, it's good that the solution panned out. Like
yeah, I had the graphics, I had the music, I had the map, I had everything. The only thing I had to do is to code it in C++ for a computer, which was quite easy. So I did it.
Yeah. And what made you want to attach this to Ghost 1.0 rather than say Unepic?
Can you repeat the question, please?
Why did you make a spin-off of say Ghost 1.0 instead of Unepic?
Oh yeah, because I did mini goals after finishing goals 1.0, and I said I was doing a new game. I need the graphics, and I said, what could I do? Okay, instead of just thinking something, I will use the last game I did. So I got inspired by Ghost, and I said, okay, let's create a space station for MSX, which is easier than create a castle in MSX, and that's what I did. It's just I said this one. I picked one and I did it. I didn't think much about it.
I like, and it sounds like it was reasonable enough success for what it needed to be.
Mhm.
Have you done more MSX projects since then?
Yes, I did. After Ghost for MSX, I created a video game called Prisoner of War for MSX1. And it's like the little brother of Unmetal. In fact, Unmetal is a porting of this project called Prisoner of War, porting to PC. But this time with new graphics, new dialogues, new everything, new bosses. It's not a direct port of the game. It's like a big brother. So this Prisoner of War was released and was very successful too among MSX users. And last but not least, I recently released a new one for MSX2, second generation, with better graphics and much more, which among users they say is the best MSX game ever created. So that's what they say. It's unbelievable. It's called Pampas and Celine.
Yeah. Is it MSX2 or MSX2 Plus?
MSX2. It works on MSX2, 2 Plus, and Turbo R. So it's been released recently, and now I'm creating a PC version. It's not finished yet. I'm actually nowadays I'm just working on it. I'm finishing some. I have to do it for players from today because the game is created for MSX for players from 30 years ago. But the way players play today is quite different. So I have to adapt the game to today's players. And it's taken me a lot of effort, actually, yes.
So you've mentioned, but I suppose before we can delve into that, we do have to get into, I suppose, what is your most recent, let's say, major title, or at least something that wasn't done as an MSX project first. That is Unmetal.
Yes, exactly.
Yes, which is an interesting beast in that it is a satire of the Metal Gear series, and not just in terms of having Solid Snake, but it's Metal Gear in terms of its gameplay and stuff like that. It is tactical espionage action.
Mm-hmm.
And
exactly, yeah.
Yeah. I suppose the first question here is, what made you want to tackle this particular juggernaut? I mean, I can imagine since MSX connections, but
it's because it's a poll I did on Twitter. I asked my public what MSX game they would like me to do, and they say a Metal Gear like video game. So I created Prisoner of War. Later, to do after finishing Ghost 1.0, so I started to create a couple of games. I started because after a month, the result didn't convince me, so I just rejected it. After the second rejection, I said to myself, okay, I need to fresh up somehow. And I started to do a porting of Prisoner of War. And what was supposed to be a porting became Unmetal. So the reason it's a Metal Gear like game is because it comes from Prisoner of War that was chosen by my public on Twitter to be a Metal Gear like game. That's the reason.
Okay, and I think you mentioned before that this is another satirical game, like Unepic, but you had much more of an issue coming up with the comedy here. Presumably because you couldn't draw from role-playing sessions this time around. So I suppose that does beg the question, where did you draw the satirical elements for Unmetal?
Elements, I got the elements from, do you mean the, excuse me, the comedy elements or the elements from the game itself?
We'll start with the comedy elements.
Okay. I'm inspired from action movies and action TV series from the 80s. Do you know, when you see an action movie, you like it, but you also laugh at it because it's very exaggerated. And
Yes.
yeah, there's a movie from Schwarzenegger that there's a guy that enters in a movie and I can't remember the title, but
Commando.
it's like this. So any movie from action movie from the 80s, there's a lot of things that are very exaggerated, and not only from the 80s, from the 90s, and maybe nowadays. And I said, there's a lot of fun we can do about it, and
No-
that's where I did. So most of the fun comes from cliches from action movies from the 80s.
It's certainly a rich source of cheese, let's say. Granted, it does depend on like the action movie and so on and so forth, but yeah, a lot of those, have different tinges to them, let's say. But now, in terms of like the gameplay, this is very different from what's come before in terms of, instead of a Metroidvania title, you've done a top-down 2D stealth affair. Was such a transition difficult in terms
No,
of developing gameplay?
No, not at all. Not at all, actually. I just thought what I wanted to do and I just did it. So there's nothing very complicated on it. So, in fact, the original game in MSX had no chapters. It was just a game from the beginning to the end. But I fear that players from today, they could get lost with backtracking, whatever. So I decided to split the game in 10 chapters. So once you finish chapter 1, you cannot go back and get lost. So the game is more linear and easier to reach the end of the game.
Yeah.
Which is my main goal. I want the player to finish the game because for me it's the best, because all the effort, all the work and the dialogues and everything I did, especially the ending of the game, which is awesome by the way, I want everyone, the maximum possible of people to watch it, to see it and to have fun of it.
I'm currently in chapter 3. So not sure if I'm going to get to the ending in time for the review, but yeah. It's a unfortunate consequence when you work with a lot of games in any given period. Like, time is at a premium. Like,
I know it. Yeah, especially you have a lot of games to play and to test, and time is gold.
Yeah, but I've enjoyed what I've played so far. That being said, it's it's certainly, how do I put this? A simpler affair than an actual Metal Gear title. I should caution that out of the gate. Like, if someone is looking for an actual Metal Gear experience here, they might not necessarily find it, because it doesn't have like all of the radar tracking, for example, in the Metal Gear games, among other things. And I'm wondering, was that a conscious choice, or is that something just kind of that arose from developing the game?
Well, the thing is, I don't have PlayStation at home, so I never played the Metal Gear series.
Like,
I tried the second one, the
mhm.
Metal Gear 2. Something. What's the subtitle?
Well, here's the thing: Metal Gear. I'm assuming you're talking about Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah, Metal Gear
Um,
Solid 2, the one with Strider. There's a guy with white hair.
and not Metal Gear 2, which is an MSX2 title.
No,
Um,
MSX. Of course, I played both MSX title,
okay,
but I mean the PlayStation series.
right,
There's
right,
the second one is what's the
yeah,
subtitle? It's well, I
yeah,
tried it in some
yeah,
in a friend of mine's, and I saw the radar, and I say I'm playing just watching the radar. I'm not watching the screen. Just only the
right,
radar because it's telling me where the enemies are and it's telling me everything, so I don't need to watch the game, which is
right,
ridiculous.
right.
I didn't like it actually. So as I that was the thing, the part I tried. I liked it, of course. I really loved it, but this radar thing wasn't appealing. So
Right. The
as I didn't play the PlayStation series, I mean the big ones with all the dialogues and all the stuff. So
mhm.
I didn't apply it in my game because simply I don't know it.
Like, fair enough. Yeah, the thing is with the whole Soliton radar thing, it's like it's something that gets played around with, or there are sections that you don't have access to the radar in order to make that particular section more difficult. It's a very Kojima thing, like, um,
Mhm.
and it's something that arose from Metal Gear 2, actually. Like, it's a whole thing, but
Mhm.
I do know what you're talking about, because I do remember, like, Metal Gear Solid 1 having a lot, everything laid out in terms of where the enemies are, where their field of vision is, and so on and so forth. Like, um, which has its pluses and minuses. Like, a thing I encounter in Unmetal is it can be hard to determine exactly where the field of vision is with the guards versus something like, not just Metal Gear, but some other games where you have access to the field vision. Like, so it's a different kind of difficulty, if nothing else.
Yeah, in fact, mine is inspired in the MSX games, where you can see the gods from an upper view, from a
right,
zenithal view.
and that's how the radar worked in Metal Gear 2. Like, you couldn't see the guards, but they were still in the area. That's kind of why the radar system had to be there. And like, something I did notice, like, with the on-screen guards, you had indicators of, like what direction they were looking on. Nothing too specific, but it's something that you wouldn't just step in and they would be alarmed. Um, which
That
could
was
be
too
an
easy.
issue. Yeah,
It was too easy.
fair enough.
But from my
Right.
point of view, of course, from my point of view.
Of course. And that does beg another question.
Mhm.
How did the fan base, or the people that purchased the game, respond? Did they, what did they think of the stealth system in Unmetal?
Uh, Everything I receive from Metal, everything are positive, and they love the game. So they have a blast. Everyone tells me, Fran, I'm having a blast with your game, and I had a lot of people buying the physical version because of that.
Right.
So they find it refreshing because it's not a Metal Gear. So it looks like, but it's not. It has its own personality. They love the characters. They love Jesse Fox, and they love the dialogues. Because every 5-10 minutes, I'm inserting something, and people are looking forward to progress in the game to find the next dialogue. And yeah. So they're
It's
having a lot of fun. So
it's definitely
I remember I had some bad reviews from I don't know, an Epic or Ghost 1.0 because the kind of humor. One I remember one told me, you are an immature person because of the dialogues in Unmetal. In an Epic. And I said, well, that's like I was 25 years ago. it's so, but with Unmetal, I don't have any bad review from it. The only not bad review, but complaint is one of the bosses, which is the nuclear submarine, is slightly more difficult. So there's a spike of difficulty. But this is the only thing concerning the gameplay and the dialogues and the story and everything. Everyone loves it.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good, and I can see how that would happen. And has this game been as big a success as Unepic was?
It's no. Nowadays, it's hard to find a success like an Epic because of the situation of the market. I mean, because it's hard to have visibility and hard to buy a game when you have 200, 300, 400 games on Steam that you still haven't played. It's been successful because the second month I recovered everything, and since then everything is it's profit, and it's great for my next project. But it's not been at the level of an Epic. I wish it had, but it has not been. In fact, most people that play the game now, they say, I didn't know there was a new game, but I'm having a blast. So my problem, like anyone else's problem, other developers, is to let people know that this game exists and that they have to buy and or at least download the demo and try it. It's a battlefield here with all this amount of projects and games coming out every single day, and the time of people is limited. They cannot play all the games.
Tell me about it. But I will give this game the nod in that at the very least it stands out more than I'd say. Like if Unepic got released today, I would imagine that game would just be swept under the waves of 50 Metroidvania of the indie persuasion that would come out that particular week. I mean, it's a very popular genre on the indie scene versus something in the vein of Metal Gear, far more rarefied. I'm not saying that's good or bad. I'm just observing where the trends lie.
Yeah.
I'm like, anyway, so we are unfortunately running low on time, so I will wrap things up with asking about your next project, if you can talk about it.
So right now I cannot talk about the next project because I'm finishing now Pampas and Celine, which is a porting of the MSX2 game I did. I'm finishing the multiplayer and polishing stuff. And what I'm going to do later, but I don't know, because on one hand, thinking with the brain, I should do something like an Epic 2. And right. That's thinking with the brain. However, for me, doing a sequel of a game means just to work again more years in something I already worked, and I have to fight against myself. So I have to do a game that is equal or better than the first one. Otherwise, imagine people would be, would be, what's the word?
Disappointed.
Disappointed, yeah. But I don't want people to be disappointed. For me, excuse me, I'm a little bit exhausted. For me, the opinion of people is very important to me, and especially from players. On the other hand, using the HUD, I'd like to do new projects, new ideas, to develop them and come up with new ideas. With the brain, an Epic 2 is easier to sell because people already know it and they would buy it easily than a new project, you know? So this is my fight, brain versus heart. Who's going to win? I don't know. It all depends on what I do when I'm ready to do it.
Right. I get what you're saying, and this is the struggle that I've seen elsewhere, and it's something that I suppose has a bit of a universality to it in terms of this is something that from solo dev to especially like big publishers. Do you make something that's more guaranteed to be commercially successful and that's a proven track record versus something that could be more interesting
Yeah.
and so on and so forth. And I suppose with someone in your position, the choice is yours and yours alone.
Yeah, it's mine. And of course, I know that if I do an Epic 2, it's going to be much more successful than our title. But the thing is, what's more important, the money you get from it, or how much fun do you have during the years you are working in? So this is the big issue here.
Yeah, I'm like, it's not a question that's easily answered. Like,
Yeah. Well, of course, I'm
but
going to have fun with an Epic, but it's going to be harder because I have to fight against myself. So new monsters. There's a lot of things I cannot copy. I have to. Everything has to be new somehow, and new techniques, and and I have to do an editor because an Epic has an editor and multiplayer too. So it's a lot of years of work. Dun,
right.
dun, dun. Instead of
Right.
of a small project that can be maybe a couple of years, you have it ready to be sold. So that's I don't know what I'm going to do. I hope I knew, but I don't know right now. It all depends on how I feel when the moment comes.
Well, I mean, maybe when you figure that out, or like when your next project is ready to be talked about, we can discuss it further.
Of
But
course,
in the meantime, the game is Unmetal. It's currently
Mhm.
available for I think all major platforms.
All major platforms.
Yeah, retailing for $19.99. So be sure to pick it up on your platform of choice today. And yes, this will about do it for this installment of Fragments of Silicon. Be sure to join us next time for the Sunday reviews. And until then, I shall wish you good gaming.